everyone. Just waiting for Barbara to join us. Thank you so much for being a part of this Instagram Live. Kagiso, welcome. Thank you for joining. Thanks for joining, guys. We're just waiting for Barbara to come on board and then we'll start our live. How's it, Ariana? Thank you so much, Carnita. Appreciate that. Appreciate you being part of the live. It says, okay, let me just try. Just trying to get Barbara on. Let's just see. I've invited her again. Kagiso, that's awesome, from Joburg. So nice to have you here on this live this afternoon. I think it's going to be a very good discussion. Just hoping that Barbara can join. It looks like she's joined. Barbara? Barbara, I've sent an invite to you on compassionate closure. You just need to accept the invite. But I'll also invite you on Barbara, and let's see, maybe you can come on the other page. Barbara, I've invited you on your main page now because compassionate closure isn't working. Let's see. I've sent the invite again, Barbara. You should be able to accept, you should get an invite, or you can also request to join live on the live. But I have sent you the invites directly. Carnita joining from Gaborone, Botswana. Yo, that's awesome. Thank you so much for being part of this discussion. Shane, Barbara, I don't know if you're getting our invites to join. It said now compassionate closures unable. Okay, let's see. I'll try to get you on again. I've sent another invite to you, Barbara. Compassionate closure. There you go. Now you just need to flip the camera, Barbara, and we're all good.
I did already.
Just try and flip it one more time because it's going to the other end, but you're on at least.
I don't know where to do it here.
On the screen, there should be 2 arrows in a circle. You click those 2 arrows in a circle.
No. Um,
You'll see there should be a microphone, a camera, and then there's 2 arrows
no,
circling. You press
no,
that.
no. I know how to do it normally, but it's not on here.
Sure.
I had flipped it on my camera on my phone. Maybe I
Yeah.
need to flip it, but it was already flipped.
Yeah, I'll try. Maybe if you can try again so it can come towards so we can see you, because at the moment we can't see your
No,
face.
no. Okay, let me go out of here and flip my camera back again.
Okay, and then rejoin. Okay. It's Barbara's first live, guys, so it's going to be an awesome one, but she's joining from the UK as well. So we're just getting all of this sorted, and then I'll invite her shortly. We're still good for time because we were meant to start at past, so we're still going good for time. Thank you so much to everyone for joining. Okay, so let me invite. I'll give her a little bit of time to just work on the camera, and then we'll see. Thank you everyone for joining. Really looking forward to this discussion. I know that Barbara has a lot of really important stuff to share, and it's really nice that it is her first Instagram live. So we're looking forward to having her join us. She's just getting her camera sorted. We'll start very shortly.
Here we are. Oh, no, man.
Yeah, it's still pointing the other way.
But I've just turned it around. Sorry.
Is there no way on the screen? Because on my screen I can see the camera flip option.
No, I can't. No, wait.
There you go. Something's happening.
There we are.
There you go.
I'm
Okay,
sorry.
Barbara, awesome.
Sorry.
No problem. No problem.
I was going to say that I'm actually going live from the coal face
Yeah.
in Sussex in London,
Yeah.
and I've been looking after a 97-year-old, and I haven't slept for a week.
Jeez. But I mean, it's so awesome that this is your first Instagram live. It's so awesome that you're open to doing this. So yeah, Barbara, thank you so much for joining. I'm just going to do a short introduction, and then I'll let you take the floor. So, are you there, Barbara? Shame. It looks like you've disconnected, but she'll reconnect shortly.
Here.
Yeah. The camera's flipped. There you go. Okay, we're all good, Barbara.
No, I can't see you though.
No, I'm here.
I can't see you.
But can you see yourself?
I can see myself.
As long as you're present, I'm happy.
Okay. Okay. Okay, go. We'll blame it.
Cool,
We'll blame it on the planets.
Yes. Well, Barbara, I'm just going to do a short introduction, and then we can just let the conversation lead from there. So thank you so much for joining us. To all of our followers, I'm sure most of you know me. My name's Daniel Marsh. I'm the founder and director of a business called Marsh Fidelity. We specialize in administration of estates, will drafting, and trust fund management. But most importantly, we provide closure to families through a difficult process. Today I'm joined with Barbara. Barbara is a mentor, writer, emotional strategist, spiritual strength encourager, and she is also a person that walks with people through difficult paths to show them that it's not that difficult and gives people strength in aging. So today I will be sharing a bit about the estate planning tips and tools that you can use if you have a terminal illness or if you're getting old in age. And Barbara will be sharing some important tips about what to look for as you age and how to embrace aging in a positive way. But also I'd like to hear from Barbara a bit about how she provides strength or insight to people that have been given a terminal diagnosis. So Barbara, if you'd like to introduce yourself and just have a brief introduction of how your journey has come to this point.
Yeah. Okay, so the first thing I want to do is just read something that David Bowie wrote. Aging is an extraordinary process whereby you become the person you always should have been.
Sure.
Yeah, I know it's profound, but I mean, we don't expect anything less from David Bowie.
Yes.
So I was one of the first life coaches in South Africa to focus on EQ and SQ. That's emotional quotient and spiritual quotient. That was back in the 1990s.
Sure.
So it's the aged looking after the aged. And I developed all my own content. And was very successful in taking all the soft skills training into corporates and so on. And I must say, I got a little bit bored. Things happened in my own life. 2015, so we've moved on a few years.
Yeah.
And I decided that I needed a change, and I followed my own advice that I'd give other people. When you want to change, do the opposite of what you would habitually do.
Sure.
So I did like a hairpin bend move.
Yeah.
And decided that I would go on a sabbatical. A sabbatical theoretically should be anything between 3 and 6 months.
Yeah.
But I thought, okay, I'm going to take the time and actually go and study. What am I going to study that would help me understand human behavior even more?
Yeah.
And I thought, well, the only area of life, because I'm a great one in experiencing. It's one thing to study, it's another thing to experience and actually internalize your experience and then speak from that place. So I thought that I would use my British passport and go overseas and learn about old age, death, dying, grief, and literally at the coal face. And that's what I did. And I've done that on and off for the last 9-10 years. and I learned, I tell you, Daniel, I learned more about myself than I think I did anybody else.
Yeah.
But the most extraordinary experience and the most extraordinary privilege.
Yeah.
And over the last couple of years, I've moved back to be based in Hillcrest.
Yeah.
And in South Africa, and decided that all those 9 years of being at the University of Life in England needed to be used to educate other people, because with all my EQ and SQ experience and training, I could see where all the gaps were. And the gaps, and the definite, there's a, the old age population is expanding because our population is actually declining. So there are more and more old people around who need to be looked after. So it's actually a really big problem. And another quote here: "I will die, you will die, we will all die, but the universe will carry on without care." All that we have is that shout out in the wind: how we live, how we go, and how we stand before we fall. Pierce Brown.
Sure.
And so that's how I got to here.
And well, thank you so much, Barbara. And I think like what you're pointing out here is very important, because care is so much more than just cleaning beds and making sure someone has a clean pajamas to get in. Care actually goes deeper, and like we had discussed previously, is that there is a human behind the care that we provide, and it is important to understand the emotions that are involved in making a human more happy or content. And the same applies to someone that might not have a lot of life left. Actually, more so. They would need more comfort with the care than just simply providing a service. And you identify that there's a massive lack in this human connectiveness to care industry, which I think is such an important point, because the same with administration of estates. When we administer estates, it's not just an administrative requirement. There are families we deal with. There are people that we need to make sure have peace through a process. So I think that that emotional side is a very important thing. And I just wanted to share, because I'd actually written a quote down, so it's so cool that you shared a quote. But I've always been intrigued in how to care for people with terminal illnesses and how their mind processes a definitive end to say, like, you are going to pass away from a certain, say, for example, cancer. And there's this one lady that I followed her journey, and she had a living funeral where the people that had been in her life came and shared stories that inspired them by her.
Sure.
And what she says and what she shares at her funeral is, in the absence of light, there's darkness. You need light to remove the darkness and to know both sides. And likewise with life. If there's no death, you don't know what life is. You need the clarity of death to help you see clearly in life.
That is beautiful.
So I was really touched by that because, I mean, do you know what? If there is one gift of terminal diagnosis, is that you can say goodbye completely and you can get to say your final words to those you love the most. And also, life is all about a balance. We are all heading towards death. But if you're more conscious about death, you can live more clearly. If
Absolutely.
we ignore death, we can't really embrace life. So same as light and darkness, so is life and death.
It's so interesting, though, because people really don't want to think about caring for other people. They don't want to think about death. They don't want to think about the end of life.
Yeah.
People can't even say somebody died. They have to say they passed. Passed where?
Yeah.
You know?
Yes. Yes.
It's we do live in a society, I think, where we kind of put rose-tinted spectacles onto things. And actually that doesn't that doesn't allow us to live our best life.
Yeah.
It actually kind of it deadens things, and I think it deadens sensitivities that should be heightened.
Yeah, and I think also the way that the world's going, there's kind of like a lack of realness.
Yes.
And I think that realness is actually a rare commodity now. But when you are real with yourself, you can be your most authentic self. So you don't always have to agree with the status quo. You should express things that are on your heart that mean something to you, without any sort of fear that you'll be judged for it. And I think that's what you're saying. When you get older, you kind of understand yourself better, so you kind of just live more authentically, in a sense, towards the end of your life, where you're saying that we should try and do that before we start to get older on.
Yeah, absolutely, because you know what's interesting, and I'll tell you a story. Is the oldest person I've ever cared for was 102. She lived in London, Kensington.
Yeah.
She was an absolute hoot. Guess where she went to school for some of her life? She went to St. Mary's in Kloof.
Oh, awesome.
Where the dogs go woo. Yeah. And
what a small world.
I know. Anyway, she was living in Kensington and London. She had met her husband in the war.
Yeah.
But the bottom line is that I helped her die. And she was an absolute hooligan. Her last meal was a triple vodka and orange. She knew that she was dying. She didn't take a long time to die. And her death was quick, easy. There was no fuss. She had told everybody that she loved them. She had shouted at the doctors because they kept trying to put her into hospital and on oxygen. Yeah. And she was shouting back at them saying, "Do you not understand that I want to die in my own home?" But she really knew who she was. She was so authentically herself.
Yeah.
And she died like that. It was an absolute privilege to be with her those last 7 weeks. And straight after that, a friend had asked me to go and cover her with an old lady who wasn't 102, but she was 93.
Yeah.
And she was the absolute opposite. She was so miserable. She moaned and groaned about everything. She had nothing really wrong with her, not like the 102-year-old who was blind, and I had to hoist everywhere because she could not move.
Jeez.
And you know that by the end of my 7 weeks with her, with the 93-year-old who moaned and groaned all the time, was that her family had ended up putting her into a care home. And And it was the juxtaposition of those two women was like completely blew my mind.
Yeah.
Because the woman who was authentically herself and embraced life and herself and death.
Yeah.
She did have a very strong faith. She was a Catholic, so
Yeah.
I called in her priest to do the last rites at the end. But
Yeah.
it was, yeah, the authenticity was very important.
Yeah, and I think I was speaking to a doctor that also cares for terminally ill cancer patients, and she was saying that, you know, the patients with gratitude actually provide such a light atmosphere in her meetings, but when someone doesn't have gratitude and focuses only on the negative, the weight of the diagnosis is so much more. But if you are in that position, it might be hard to practice gratitude because maybe the diagnosis is unexpected. What would you say to someone that's trying to work through a difficult stage to try and find the positive in such a challenging time like that?
You know, I think it's the same. It's actually, I don't mean to minimize it, but it's the same as any challenge. The very first thing that you have to do with a challenge is face it. When you face it with honesty and humility, then you accept it. And I'm not saying that you condone it, you accept it because you're accepting what is, because we do not have the power to change that.
Sure. Barbara, that's very good. And sorry, I just want to jump in because I actually wrote this down as a note. It's nice that you've said acceptance. I said that one of the final steps of grief is acceptance.
Yeah.
Okay, so now grief can be before you pass, because if you've got a terminal diagnosis, you have to grieve that. So what you've said is so perfectly aligned that if the quicker you can accept it, the quicker you can actually get peace and move through that difficult diagnosis.
Yes, because I've seen people die, and I've just helped somebody else die with cancer, and they've actually almost enjoyed the journey.
Sure.
And it was a lady in South Africa, very old friend, and she'd asked me to come in to help her understand what was going to happen at the end. She had cancer. And so she wasn't particularly religious. She didn't have any particular faith because people often think that it has to be a spiritual or religious process. I think it should be a spiritual process. So she didn't have that, but she had the most unbelievable humility.
Sure.
And she had the most incredible acceptance of what was.
Yeah.
And do you know what her biggest fear was?
Yeah.
What her only fear was that she was going to put her family through pain.
Sure. That's incredible. And I mean, like I said when we first spoke, one of my first clients was a couple that were married for over 50 years. And they both got a cancer diagnosis at the same time. And his one went into remission, but his wife's got progressively worse and then terminal. And he was a qualified CA. He had multiple businesses, very successful man. And his wife died in his arms. And now my first meeting with him, I thought that would have been a tough situation to go through. And when I said to him, I'm so sorry for your loss, he said, Daniel, my greatest achievement in life was holding my wife when she died. So it shows you how powerful relationships are, but also how powerful your perspective of life is. Because I think he was so in tune with himself that he turned something that we would think is a very hard thing to go through to actually a beautiful bit of light in his life.
Absolutely, because it's an absolute honor and a privilege. And I just want to jump in here and just commend you on the work that you do, because I'd heard about you and I'd heard about, your reputation preceded you.
Thank you.
But the reputation wasn't as a legal man. Your reputation was as a humanitarian.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Barbara. And I think like that, I think sometimes in life, you stumble across your purpose and everything makes sense. And it doesn't matter. You don't have to do that when you're young. It can come to you authentically. I wasn't actually searching for my purpose. But when I did my first estate, I realized that everything I'd been through in my life made sense.
Oh.
And everything that I'd learned was power. Even the most difficult parts of my life, when I lost my mom and my brother in a car accident that I was involved in, the most difficult part of that became a jewel that I could use to help others. And what I've always tried to encourage people is that when you've lost someone that you love, it doesn't mean you've lost yourself.
No.
Because I went through a stage where I couldn't love anyone. I didn't have capacity to believe in myself. And through my years of grieving and getting through difficult times, I realized that my mom and my brother would actually want to see me do well. They wouldn't want to see my life end when they left. So now I work and live to also embrace their legacy through all that I do and the work that I provide through Marsh Fidelity.
That's very profound, especially, may I say, for somebody of your age.
Thank you. I think, do you know what, Barbara? Do you know what? I feel that life experience is really a gift, and it doesn't mean that it doesn't have to be beautiful life experience. Sometimes the biggest gifts are the most difficult life experiences, and we won't ever realize it when we're going through it.
So the gift that all of that trauma that you went through and the deaths, that actually gave you a part of yourself that maybe you didn't realize existed.
Yes, exactly. And also I had to be ready, and I had to be strong enough to look at that grief in the eyes and say, I'm going to walk through this path that I've been ignoring for long. Because when you go through a traumatic experience, you block out that path.
Yeah.
And I went through many years where I couldn't even watch videos of my mom and brother. I would just start crying and I'd run away from the room.
Yeah.
But to heal, I had to face the reality of what had happened. And I think when I faced the reality, firstly, I felt a weight lifted off of my heart. Yeah. And I actually felt so much peace. And then once I had healed, I believed that my best way to purpose defined is basically a struggle you've overcome. And then you use that to help other people get through your battle that you faced.
Absolutely. Absolutely, because one of the, probably the main reason that I do the work that I do, not only the work around educating around death and dying and grief and dementia and so on, but with all my other work, is that life is made up of suffering. And a lot of my focus is taking that suffering and turning it into something of value.
Sure.
So, which is basically what you're describing. And, you know, a similar thing, I was widowed at 28. And my late husband was the love of my life. I went on to remarry and have beautiful children and experience other things that I couldn't with him. But to be widowed at 28, it was a few days away from our third wedding anniversary, was difficult. But, you know, in hindsight, it was one of the best things that ever happened to me.
Yeah. And what have you found what was the positiveness from that experience? When you said it was one of the best things, what is the positive?
You know what I think it actually did was that there's certain times in life where you actually need to be brought to your knees.
That's true.
I've got a thing about humility, and I've got a thing about honesty, and I've got a thing about arrogance. Because arrogance leads to ignorance. And the opposite of that, or the fix for that, is that one has to at some point be brought back to earth.
That's true.
You know, that when you pray, or when you brought to your knees, it's a sign of humility. You're humbling yourself to something that you have to hand yourself over to. It's not about giving up. It's about handing over. It's about giving in. So I learned very quickly that life was made up of suffering, that I could turn it into something of value. It gave me extraordinary experience that I've been able to draw on to help other people with. And it taught me a lot about grief, because that was 40 years ago. I'm 68 now. I was 28. and the grief never goes.
Yes, that's true. And I think like, for me, a big life lesson also was humility. I had access to a university experience, a private university experience, which through my grief, I couldn't engage with properly until I'd healed. So one of the things that I did was I went on a sabbatical, which was a year-long sabbatical, and I returned to that varsity to get my degree. But I don't know if you can see this village here. This is my reminder of my humility, because I went to this village and lived in a village for around 5 to 6 weeks. And when I was in that village, I saw 6-year-old kids walking 8Ks to school and back. And I had such a hit of reality to say I had private university. I know I had my issues, but I should have been more grateful for where I was at in life, despite the challenges I'd been through. And what was interesting was at this school, there was a section of it where they told us not to build in the walls. And we had asked the teachers, why don't you want the walls built in? And they said they get to work 2 hours early and they sing songs of worship so that the little kids that are walking from far can hear that music, and it gives them life. And it just showed me like how incredible is that? These aren't private teachers who are getting paid massive salaries. Firstly, it's hard to get someone to get to work 30 minutes early. They were getting there 2 hours early and singing this every morning for these kids. So that's why I have reminders like this in my office, is that I always, no matter how Marsh Fidelity grows and evolves, I always want to stay grounded, to say we are never bigger than the community that we serve.
Absolutely. I had quite a few clients and colleagues and people question my spending a lot of time in England doing care work, because because they thought it was beneath me.
Sure.
I didn't think that helping somebody die was beneath me.
Yeah. It's one of the biggest gifts that you can have, is to be with someone when they pass.
Yeah. And I mean, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. I was just thinking, when you were talking about all these different experiences and different people.
Yeah.
I think the other thing that I've learned is that everybody actually is different, and that one has to allow for so many differences. So I was just thinking about an old lady that I helped several years ago. She had really bad Alzheimer's, which is not easy. It's not easy to manage at the end. And she had 4 children, and each of her 4 children were extremely different from each other.
Yeah.
And they each approached those final weeks of hers and the weeks after that very, very differently. And I think that that's also something that I've learned, is that everybody's different, and yet there's a part of everybody that lives in us too. So the more awareness we have of ourselves, the more awareness that we grow of other people, because we do mirror each other. But interesting that the one daughter just didn't really want to see her mum. She came to say hello and goodbye, and then she said to me, Barbara, I can't cope. I said, it's fine.
Yeah.
You said goodbye, it's fine. Her one son could only come and visit her after he'd had a bottle of red wine.
Sure.
I could smell him coming in the room. And he was very jolly, and he kept the palliative care team amused. But he was, and so I think that what you're also saying here is that there needs to be a lack of judgment and a lack of comparison.
Yes. And also, Barbara, what I learned as well through a mentorship program that I went through with a guy called Stanley Gabriel. He's known as the unconventional CEO. I think I still need to send you his interview, but he mentored me one-on-one for a whole year. And what he said is that we often approach the world from our level of consciousness. So if you are highly conscious, you're a bit softer on not being so judgmental. But if you don't have a high level of consciousness, you're quick to judge. So I found that one of the greatest teachers I've ever had was actually a very meek person. They weren't very outspoken or brash or anything like that. They were soft, but in that softness, they were deep waters. So I really understood after he taught me, like, your consciousness, the way that you approach the world. So you mustn't judge people as well that come off aggressively, because it's the way that they've seen the world.
Yes.
And maybe our lesson is to say, let's not fuel fires. Let's try and direct ways to reduce this burn inside people that are actually hurting them.
Yes. Yes. But I think that that's the one beauty of death, and all that goes with it, and you know, dealing with terminal illness and that sort of thing, is that it does, it if you allow it, it really affects you so deeply. And if you actually say yes to that process and you actually allow it, that you can access so much knowledge. And you can access so much compassion and wisdom and understanding and insight into yourself and other people. And, you know, I mean, the one thing that makes the world go around is human behavior. And I'm always surprised that we don't study human behavior more, you know.
Exactly.
I just, I don't always get it. But do you want to share with us a little bit more about some of what you do? I'm keen to hear a bit more.
Yeah, so I think basically the work that we do is, firstly, it's very technical work. Because of the importance of the work that's required, you really have to know what you're doing. So I think when it comes to administration of estates, what we really have invested in is education. Because in my view, if you are educated, you can provide clarity. And I've always said that the best way to be kind when you're administering an estate is to be clear.
Yes.
So a lot of times a family will have someone as executor, but they don't update them or keep them in the loop or are clear about the process. We try and do the flip side, where we educate the public for free through our platforms like Instagram. But also, when you're a client of ours, we make sure that if you have any questions or concerns, we are available to talk to you in detail. So we don't just say, send us a mail, we'll get back to you next week. We often take calls, we provide updates, because I think the clarity is the best way to practice kindness in our industry. So that's what I've learned. And I think like what I've found from not only terminal clients of ours, but with terminal clients, it kind of fast tracks an estate planning process that everyone should actually have. But I only see it in motion when the client really knows that they're at the end.
Yeah. Look, I think, you know, what you're doing is you taking people through a process, and it's a very, very important and necessary process. But your sort of value add to all of that, and what makes you a really decent humanitarian, is the fact that you're factoring in that it's not just a physical, financial process, that it's emotionally, spiritual, and mental at the same time.
Yes.
And, you know, the legal process can always be seen as the devil in disguise, and can be seen as the mean bad guy.
Yeah, I mean, my advice, the way that I approach will drafting is that we should not be looking at price and free services and discounts. My view of having a will in place is our most important assets are actually our relationships and the people that we love the most. So a will is actually an act of service and love for those we love the most. It's not the way that it's marketed at the moment, where it's a financial transaction, you must have this, and if you get 20% off, firstly, do you want a discount in a service that will care for your family? Or do you just want to pay for a service that you know when you pass, you'll have peace? Because a lot of people will see a free will and they think, hey, let me sign up, it's all done, we sorted. But you don't actually see the service. That's the thing. That's one of the rare things about an executor's role. You'll never see your executor's job, your family role. So plan for the relationships well, and then you can have peace of mind. And I think that's about engagement and relationship building before you pass. Because if you don't have a will, then there's no closure, or the closure is delayed because there's no clear direction when you pass. A will sets out a very clear direction. So the first thing that I advise terminal clients or any client, estate planning starts with having a will. Okay, we can talk about all of our dreams and hopes and stuff, but talk about that with a valid will in place, because a lot of people talk about it and then all of a sudden they pass and it's too late.
Exactly.
So the first thing that I'd put on my list was, let's get a will in order. And then when we partner with our clients, what we do is once a year we check in, because sometimes clients are very busy and they don't always think of checking in with the executor. We take that role away and we just send an email once a year. Has anything changed? Do you want to update your will? No, Dan, I'm all good. Or, yeah, this happened. We had a child. Please, can you add them? Because you'll be surprised how many kids are actually left out of wills because they haven't updated for years.
Really?
Yeah, so that can't be fun.
No, that's awful.
Yeah. So I'm saying that's also why we have to be conscious about also keeping in check with our clients. We shouldn't just put the burden of the will now on the client and say, hey, you signed your will, good luck with it. We also consciously follow up. And then I think another important thing is, have you heard of a living will?
Yep.
Yeah, so if you have a terminal illness, it's quite important to have this if you don't want to be kept on life support if you're in a vegetated state and you want to go naturally. You should sign a living will so that it will direct that if you no hope of survival, they can turn the machines off.
Yeah, so there's a lot in the news actually in Britain at the moment about proper assisted dying.
Yeah.
But the living will is the same as they would call here a DNR, do not resuscitate.
Yeah.
And and that's why it's so important to actually talk about these things and have well-informed people like you and I to talk to about these things, because I have yet to come across the 102-year-old I referenced earlier. She died, and everybody, it was so clear. Everything was clear, but I've seen so many other times where it's all gone wrong.
Yeah.
But I think it's vital that you think about all the people. You need to think about what hymns you want. You need to think about how you're going to be buried. You need to think about where your last gold bracelet needs to go.
Yeah.
Because I've had a daughter on the phone to me saying, before my brother gets there, take all that gold jewelry off my mother's arm.
Sure. Yeah.
And it's quite unsettling, to say the least.
So I think that's a very important point that you've raised, and something I'd also put on my list here is, it's called a life file, which is quite interesting because it's actually about your death, but it's called a life file. And in this life file, you'll keep all your important documents, your important directions, your property title ownership, your investments, key contact people to contact if you pass. How would you like to be buried? What would you like your last send-off message on social media to be? Barbara, you have a social media page. It would be nice to have something to say, Barbara wrote this in a life file. She wants to share it with her followers.
I think that's awesome. I have to admit, I've asked my children to do all of that, and I haven't done one for myself.
Yeah. So you see, it's quite cool. And you know what it's about? It's about just saying, okay, this day I'm going to sit down and just do this thing. Because once the life file is in place, you can just update it periodically, but at least you have a foundation. Yeah,
I just wanted to backtrack to the living will and the do not resuscitate thing, because again, that's something that people don't really want to talk about. Yes. And because if somebody's dying and they kind of racing towards death, things are changing a lot, and a lot of the time there are medical professionals around, and medical professionals, their whole ethos is we need to keep people alive.
Exactly.
And there can be moral, religious, social, cultural hoo-ha going on. And And I think about somebody who was dying, who had Alzheimer's. She'd had Alzheimer's for quite a few years. So she had the DNR in place, but she didn't have the right power of attorneys in place. And it was a whole mission. And I ended up actually being able to put the right DNR in place simply because I had a good relationship with her doctor. But I had to, but then I, as the carer, spent about a month engaging with all of the children to find out, because remember, she didn't have mental capacity. So the fact that she was at end of life, she had absolutely no mental capacity at all, and hadn't had for 2 years, 3 years. So there was, fortunately, I'd been there a long time, and I'm all about relationships. So it was laborious, but it was quite simple and easy to do. And then the other thing that people don't realize is that when somebody's gone into active dying, which is the same as we go into active labor, your body's going, okay, we need to do this. And it's a process. It's a process. But there's a lot of change, and one of the things that people need to understand about dying is that it can be painful. It can cause agitation. There's so many things. People don't want to know what's going on physically, and then when you're watching somebody die, and it's worse, obviously, when it's a loved one or a mom or whatever, and it's a shock. It becomes a whole shock, and you don't know what to do, and you don't have the education, you don't have the facts, and you're relying on medical professionals and other people, and everybody's at odds because it actually needs to be understood and it needs to be written down. And so that DNR that I put in place actually changed by liaising with her main GP, probably 5 or 6 times over the space of 2 weeks. Just because she got to a point where she couldn't swallow medicine, then it was liquid. But because they hadn't had a medical power of attorney in place, it was problematic. And people, what amazes me, Daniel, is that people prepare so well for pregnancy, birth, and postpartum. But why do we not think that an exit is as important as an entrance?
That's a good point.
I don't get it. Anyway,
but that shows we've got work to do, Barbara. That's why we've got work to do. We have to kind of make people conscious about how final death is, but also how important it is to plan for the exit.
I mean, think about a stage play or a musical or a movie. The exit, the exit, the end is as important as the beginning.
Exactly.
So,
no, I agree with you totally. And I mean, also what I find challenging as well is that, for example, if someone is towards the end of their life, or they've been given a terminal diagnosis, one of the things that is very important is you should be very careful about how you move your money around, especially in South Africa. So one of the key questions I say to a client when they've told me they've got a terminal diagnosis, the first question that I actually ask is, after they've had their will sorted and life file, I say, what marriage regime are you married in if you have a spouse? Because if you married A and C without accrual, you can basically move as many assets as you can out of your personal name to your wife or husband without any donations tax liability. Obviously, if you married in community, it doesn't make a difference, because if you die, both of your estates are administered at once. But if you're married A and C, what I advise the client is start moving stuff to your husband or wife, get it out of your name, let's reduce your estate as much as possible. But one thing you do not do before you pass, if you've got a terminal illness, is start to give money to your kids, because that attracts donations tax in South Africa. So someone might think, I'm passing, let me just give 3 million rand to my kid, or 1 million rand. Now, SARS will say everything over 100,000 Rand, we're collecting donations tax on. So after you die, there's a whole mess. But if you die and you give it to your kid in a will, anything under 3.5 million is exempt from estate duty tax. So it's better to actually put your kids in your will and just keep your money in your estate in that instance, than just start to give money and throw money around. Now, also remember that when you get older, you know, one of your biggest risks are actually yourself.
Yes.
Or your kids. Okay? So sometimes I advise clients that are getting older in age, if you want to protect yourself from yourself, you might want to consider opening a trust if they have wealth, because that way you can help set the framework for the trust, and then you ultimately protect yourself firstly from yourself, but also sometimes from your kids.
Yes.
Because kids might be able to easily influence someone who's getting old in age and say, please just transfer me this, or I'll use your card. Give me your card, I'll do the shopping. And all of a sudden, a 95-year-old widow's account is 15,000 a month at Woolworths. So
I've seen it happen.
So you see, so having the consciousness to have a professional to say, I can see you getting old on age, let's look at how we can protect you as you get older. Because the trust is one option, but there are other options, but the most enforceable option is to have a trust, and then you put in that trust that you will be a beneficiary and your kids are also beneficiaries.
Yeah, it's a good idea.
Because that way a professional will manage it, take care of your medical bills, the kids' schooling, medical aid, etc.
I think people generally underestimate the admin of life.
Yeah.
You know, because it's laborious, and again, it brings our attention to the fact that we, you know, in order to get through life more seamlessly, we need to educate ourselves, because you can't navigate somewhere unless you got your wits about you.
Yes, and like you said at the beginning, the best way to get through anything is directly through it, to face it.
Yeah.
And I think that applies to so many things in life. I mean, I loved when you said that if someone had a terminal diagnosis, the best advice is to try and face it head on. And I think that applies to everything.
Yeah, I think, you know, it comes up when people say, when I'm coaching people and they say, well, I don't, and I've identified the fact that they don't know, they don't like conflict or confrontation.
Yeah.
So we're having a conversation around that.
Yeah.
And that brings up the concept that most people don't like to face something. They don't like to confront something that is seen as a negative, or seen as threatening or difficult.
Yes.
And yet the word the only way to actually face it, the only way to get through confrontation is to face it. So if somebody said, look, you know, you need to climb Mount Kilimanjaro, the first thing that you have to do is turn and face it. That's all it means. And the next thing is that you have to accept that you've got to just take one step.
Yeah. So I think, and also like to add to those estate planning tips that we've discussed so far, another thing that I thought was quite important is that you should give your next of kin the password to your computer and maybe email account.
Yes.
Because your email account holds so much value for your estate as well, because a lot of the details of medical aid and stuff is stored on there as well. And also, if you are employed and you get a terminal diagnosis, it's very important to know your rights and also to find out what company policy is, because the first thing that might happen is they will want to say, let's end the contract, or we don't see a future here. But there could be sick leave available to you that you should take if you want to continue working. There could be certain aspects in the contract that you can enforce. And what often happens is, if you have life cover and you have a terminal diagnosis, they will sometimes pay out that life cover whilst you're alive because you have a terminal diagnosis.
Yes.
Then you can use that money to help with your increased medical bills, to help spend a softer time at the end of your life. So if you have life cover and you've got this diagnosis, you can actually engage to say, can this get paid out because of this? I've heard it can. And I've had clients that have had their life cover paid to them personally before they pass.
Well, knowledge is power.
Yeah. So I think that that's important as well. But that's why it's important to engage with a professional on all aspects. So to engage with someone like yourself, who can help them from an emotional intelligence side and also spiritual intelligence, but also a professional side like ourselves, where we actually do administration of estates full time.
Yeah.
And because of that, there's not going to be back and forth. It's going to be very sharp, direct, clear information that will help them. We're not going to beat around the bush and lead them all over the place. We'll just say, we think you need to do this. And we shortcut all of the other stuff that's unnecessary.
Yes, and this might be off a bit, but it speaks to what you're saying about being clear, concise, and detailed.
Yeah.
And being able to face having difficult conversations, because that's actually what we're saying.
Yeah.
The last lady that I spent quite a bit of time with, who had cancer and who died just over a week ago.
Yeah.
She called me in to see her a couple of times, and she wanted to actually know in detail what was going to happen. And
sure.
Yeah, and she wanted to know what was going to happen with her body, what were all the possibilities.
Yeah.
And I must have spent in total 6 or 7 hours with her over a period of time, talking about all the possibilities and having a look at her room. And you know what she wanted to know, but she also wanted to know what it would look like for her family. And I think again, all the attention to detail that you can give people from your perspective, or that I can, it's not a one-way street, it's a two-way street. So it's for the person who might be getting old or going to die or whatever, but it's a two-way street because it is so invaluable for the people who left behind.
Yeah, I love that. I love that you brought up that it's not actually just our circle, it's the people that link into our circles as a human.
Do you know, this lady's first question to me when I first popped in to see her was, I need to know what's going on because I don't want my family to suffer. Sure. And I want to know whether it's going to be better for me to die at home or in a care facility. Bang.
Jeez. Sure. Wow, that's incredible.
Yeah. So she wasn't thinking about herself. She'd completely come to terms with what was going to happen. She wanted to know how to manage herself physically and emotionally. And the biggest thing was, she said that she really appreciated that I was brutally honest.
Sure.
And that I didn't hold anything back. And that every question she asked, I would answer as best I could, as honestly as I could. And she cried at the end of each time, and she said, "Thank you so much. It means so much to me. And it's not only about me, it's about my family." Sure. And you know what? Her death was quick, easy, quiet, just exactly how it should have been.
Well, Barbara, I've also got a quote from you.
Oh.
And it just ties in exactly with what you've said. When your clients have learned to answer their own questions, your work is done.
Yeah. I've been wrapped over the knuckles for that from business people saying that if you say that, you'll never get repeat clients.
But it shows so clearly that you are actually trying to help them to answer questions that they are stuck on. And I think that because you're so clear and direct with your feedback, that you get to that point quicker, where they can actually answer the concerns. Because it's not just questions, it's actually concerns that they want answered. And when they are better educated on the process, I think, like I said, with our work, clarity is kindness. And that's all you're doing with your directness. There's a misconception that kindness actually means let's cuddle and let's laugh and giggle. Okay. Kindness is actually direct sometimes. And kindness actually is there to kind of cut away all the excess baggage and weight that isn't necessary, and let's focus on really how we can work together and how we can focus on healing through this process. And that's what I found, is that sometimes the kindest people in my life haven't always been the softest people.
No.
They've been people that are very direct and say, listen, I care about you, don't go this way.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I think that actually what you're defining is compassion.
Yeah.
Because yeah, compassion. I
Yes.
remember listening to the Dalai Lama a long time ago. I think it was the last time he was in South Africa. I listened to him for about 3 days. I'm
Yeah.
not Buddhist or anything, but he's a man of huge wisdom, and
Yeah.
he's such a mensch, you know.
Yeah.
And somebody was talking about compassion, and he said, it's very difficult to define,
Yeah.
which it is. It's used a lot, the word's used a lot, but a lot of people don't really understand it because it is very difficult to define.
Yeah.
And it's also about prioritizing, and it's about being able
Yeah.
to prioritize correctly. And he
Yeah.
said, I'll tell you what compassion means. He said, I'll tell you a story. He said, one day I was driving along through India and I was off to go to some event or other. And he
Yeah.
said, we were racing along and we saw a truck that had overturned.
Yeah.
And the truck was full of chickens.
Yeah.
So the truck had overturned and there were live chickens and people all over the place. And
Yeah.
he thought to himself, should I stay and help them? And I'm going to be late and let a whole lot of people down at the event, or should I
Yeah.
just move on? And he said, so I sent them lots of compassion and love, the chickens and
Yeah.
the people. And he said,
Yeah.
but I chose to move on in the direction that I was going to anyway.
Sure.
And I love that story.
Yeah. It's amazing. And I mean, that's also, it helps you define things through practical stories like that as well.
Yeah.
Because sometimes I think in life that there was also a guy that I've been following quite a lot, and one of his quotes really like stuck with me when I was younger. And he always said that you should tell no lies, gain no easy victories. And if you just live by this, you will be a successful person. And he was a top guy in his industry, and he said he applied this to his life. He just told no lies, and he gained no easy victories.
That's very brave. It's very courageous.
Yeah, and I think, like you say, I think that we get courage as we get older because firstly, we understand ourselves better.
Yeah.
And hopefully we can be humble in that process because humility, like we said, is very important. But one of the things that I had put here in terms of, it's not particularly estate planning, but I always encourage clients to write letters in their handwriting to the people that they love. Because I had an experience where I found my mom's journal. And when I read her words in her handwriting, it brought her to life for me in that moment. And it really comforted me to sit with a piece of paper that she wrote on, where she said, you are loved, I care about you, I want the best for you. I always try and encourage clients to write. If they have a terminal diagnosis, to write something but not even if they have a terminal diagnosis. I encourage clients that have kids to write a letter of what they would hope they achieve in their life and how much they mean to them. Because if you die and your kid is 3 years old, they do not know you.
No.
But if you have a letter that, for example, an executor or family member can give to them when they're 21 or 18, when they're going to varsity, to say you lost your mom when you were younger, but this is what she wanted for you. It's a real reality check. And it really realigns you because you can bring someone back. So I think that there's not enough power in written words and how much it means to people. So I always encourage a written letter.
I think that's very beautiful. And I think very important because the two things, the one thing there is just communication. People underestimate the power of communication. But I think that the difficulty there for a lot of people is that most people find it extremely difficult to be emotionally honest.
Yeah, yeah.
Because we brought up in a society where you don't say something in case it's ugly, or you don't say this in case somebody judges you, or you don't say that because, you know, and we're so conditioned. And actually, you know, the most beautiful, wise old people that I've had the privilege of meeting remind me of toddlers, because
Sure.
because they both have an innocence and a purity and a simplicity about them that
Yeah.
we kind of lose in the middle with all the conditioning from society and family and religion and cultures and politics and so on. But
Yeah. I think,
people generally find it very difficult to emote honestly.
do you know what? Like, I've never been someone that journals, but when I was on that year with Stanley, he told me that journaling allows you to better understand yourself and to portray yourself. If you can't understand yourself, how can those around you understand you? So if you journal, you be able to understand yourself a bit better, which means those around you can also understand you a bit better through written
Yes,
words. So I think that journaling is important, and the reason it's difficult is because it forces growth internally.
yes,
Because we are so distracted that we cannot spend the time to look inside ourselves. We always
no,
have work, we always have someone to call, we've always got an email to attend to. I went on a silent retreat in Hebridean for 5 nights, Barbara.
lovely.
No cell phone, a pen and a paper. Now, the first day I was thinking, how many emails do I have? Oh, did I reply to that message? The second day, it was like, what are we going to talk about today? But to yourself. And then you just start journaling, and you'll be so interested to see how much you're harboring because you're not writing. So, writing is a way to get all of that stuff that subconsciously we ignore. But it's so liberating to free yourself from that through written words.
That's why it's called expression.
Yes. Expression, getting it out.
Yeah. And I'm just sorry, I got distracted by, can you see these black beams behind me?
Yes.
You know how old these are?
How old?
1350.
No ways. Sure.
I just, I'm sorry, it was like squirrel.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'm sitting in a medieval town. Talk about
Oh,
the aged and the aged.
sure. That's
But yeah,
cool.
no, but that expression and that free expression is so
Yeah.
important.
Yeah.
Um, and nobody really feels always comfortable enough to do that in case, you know, what other people think, or if it doesn't come
Yeah.
out right. And yeah, it's it's a problem that I come up with against in my coaching
Yeah.
with
And I
people a
think,
lot.
Barbara, yeah, like you said, if you know yourself better, when you express yourself authentically, you have a stronger circle around you. Because, like you said at the beginning, you can't stand arrogance. So, I'm not going to see a lot of arrogant people hanging around Barbara because she knows that that's something she cannot stand. And you're not hiding that. You're being open and saying, this is just something I can't tolerate. But that's liberating. That's very liberating.
Well, it is. But that's one of the things that I teach in my coaching is that
Yeah.
if you can identify your own behavior and you can
Yeah.
identify other people's and then manage those and not really be triggered by much, because the triggers are
Yeah.
always there to teach you what you don't know and what you don't understand and what you haven't
Yes.
integrated. You know, there's no
Sure.
such thing as good or bad behavior. There's no such
She's,
thing as negative or positive emotion ever.
yeah. She's,
It's what's appropriate. It's like let's take I don't know, yes and no. Yes isn't
yeah.
more positive than no. No
Yeah.
isn't necessarily a negative.
Yeah.
No. Um, being assertive and being passive, neither one is right or wrong or positive or
Yeah.
negative. They just are
Yeah.
appropriate for different circumstances.
Situations.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, Barbara, if someone wanted to reach out to your coaching side, how do they find you? You've got an Instagram account, but do you have a website as well?
I've got a website, www.barbrascogings.com.
Yeah.
I've got 2 Facebook pages under Barbra Scogings,
Yeah.
Inspiring Self-Awareness.
Yes.
I'm on LinkedIn again, Barbra Scogings, Inspiring Self-Awareness. That's the name of me. And then 2 Instagram pages. This one, Compassionate Care, that's dedicated to old age, dementia, and all of that. This is a recent page. It's my newest page.
I think it's such a beautiful page. I've really been enjoying following your the words that you put out there. And you know what, I also want to encourage a lot of my clients that are aging to just follow this page, because I think the stuff that you put out there, I don't find it anywhere else, to be honest. I haven't seen a page similar to yours, which is quite unique.
Thank you. That means a lot, because it's a new baby.
Yeah, I think it's going to grow up to be a big baby.
Oh, good.
Yeah. But Barbra, thank you for your time. Just on one of the last things that I put here, just a small side note, is that if you have pets and you are aging, or if you have terminal diagnosis, it's important to maybe find someone that can care for your animals. Because I know some people have dogs that they absolutely love, and you don't want to put your dog down. So it would be nice to maybe find a home or a family member that could have them. But
it's so important. I looked after a wonderful old man up near Gloucester for about 4.5 years.
Yeah.
He was an absolute hooligan. And he had a beautiful dog called Peppy. She was a Labradoodle. And she literally slept with him and had breakfast with him. And I took them to pubs and they ate off the same plate. It was dreadful. The English did the heads in. But anyway, I didn't know what was going to happen when he died. So the one day I spoke to the family and I said, what is going to happen to Pepe? Because you can't take an animal away when somebody's that old. That's never going to happen. So they had quite a few options. But they were a family who had actually thought about that. It's very important. So the dog actually went to one of the grandchildren, and the old man had said that was all fine, and so it was a last wish.
Yeah, and I mean, planning for pets is something that isn't talked about enough, but it's so sad to see someone that has passed and there's no plan for an animal, because what happens is they often get put down. But I think also when you plan for pets and you've got grandkids that are willing to take over, again, it's about leaving a piece of you behind with someone, because whenever they see the dog, they'll think of gran or granddad. And it can be difficult, but also you honoring what they would want in terms of care for an animal.
Yeah, so I think we need to start the equivalent of antenatal classes.
Yeah. Yes. Yes.
No, I mean, it's like boggles the mind that we have all these antenatal classes, and there's like this massive focus on the beginning of life and get to the end of life, and I've seen it for the last 9 years.
There's
Daniel.
no planning for end of life.
No. So, and everybody fumbles and stumbles, and it
Barbra,
becomes
do you know what that means? Do you know what that means? Grief goes from here to here. The grief experience is so much larger when you're not prepared or aware of what is involved in death.
Completely.
Yeah.
Yeah, completely. Because I think of when my first husband died, I wasn't prepared. But when my parents died, and I've seen a lot of death in my time. It's not that it doesn't affect me, but it doesn't devastate me.
Yeah.
And I don't go into shock, and I'm prepared.
Yeah.
Of course you can't prepare everything. Of course you've got no control over everything. That's daft to think that.
Yeah.
But you can grow a sort of inner resilience and it's beneficial for other people, because a lot of people are falling apart and really not coping. So there needs to be 1 or 2 people around who's standing strong and who can cope.
But Barbra, I know what you're saying in that people are kind of like, they put a blind eye to death. So if someone suddenly loses their husband or wife, you can't basically move or function. But if we are more open to the idea of death, and I just wanted to quote Mike's quote again, that with life, if there's no death, you don't know what life is. You need the
Yes.
clarity of death to help you clearly live your life. You need the clarity of death to help you clearly live your life. So I think that we need to have more sort of education on passing. I don't know if you can recommend any books that people that are listening can maybe read, or do they go to your website to find out more about how to educate yourself about passing? Maybe I think following your pages is very interesting, because I see Compassionate Care does a lot of interesting posts about death and passing and stuff like that.
No, you employ me to come and give you a workshop. I've got a beautiful workshop that encompasses absolutely everything.
I think we've got our next engagement lined up, because I will take you up on that offer. I think that we should look at having a workshop in Hillcrest in the future, and then we can market it like an antenatal class, but it's a death planning class. I don't know how many takers we'll get, but I think that those people that are conscious and enlightened to this process will definitely come. So, Barbara, I think that we should leave it on that thought. I saw we just got a heart from someone. So that's one person attending, and I will attend, and our team members will attend.
I know who she's in Johannesburg. She's going to have to fly down.
Okay, that's cool. Well, Barbara, I just want to say thank you so much for coming to this live. I know.
Thanks for the invite. And I'm excited.
Now you're going to be a fundi on it.
I'm excited to get back to South Africa so we can actually start these anti-death classes.
Yeah, I mean, I'm really interested, Barbara. Let's see. I mean, we can word it that, listen, there's free cake and coffee. And my wife has just commented to say she'll be there as well. So
just see.
Yeah.
Well, you're very lucky to have a husband like your husband.
Thank you, Barbara. Well, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it, Barbara. I can tell you that I actually feel quite, I'm pleased with this conversation, because I've also learned a lot through it. And I'm sure that our followers, and for years to come, people will listen in. Someone's just said, love you, Barbs, Claude's.
Yeah. Hi, Claude's.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Barbara.
Thank you very much. And carry on trucking, hey?
Thank you.
And
we'll chat soon.
I'll see you on the other side. Lots of love.
Caroline said amazing with champagne glasses.
Oh, yeah, okay,
Cheers,
with bubbles.
Bye.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.